Money is a relatively new concept to us Indigenous folks. And I'm not saying that as like an excuse or anything, but I am. But I am saying it as an excuse, actually. All right, welcome back, my Neechies, my friends, my natives, my non-natives, just everyone who is watching / listening. Thank you for coming back. I don't know how to say that to make that sound less sad. Welcome back to another episode of the Neechie Mindset Podcast. I am your host, the Bannockist, the baddest. Do I say the baddest and then the Bannockist? Bannockist kind of sounds like anarchist. So if you were a native and you were an anarchist, you could be called a banarchist. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Okay. Anyways, I am your host, the baddest, the bannockist, Cree Nomad. Welcome back. Today, I'm actually kind of excited to talk about this episode. I think this is a really important episode, especially considering the society we live in. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about, this is episode 1 of 2, which is like my first like dual kind of episode where it's like 1 out of 2 and stuff. I'm pretty excited about that. But this episode, we're going to be talking all things money. Actually, we're only going to be talking about half of all things money. Actually, I think money is such like a wide topic and there's so many different areas you can cover. So obviously we're not going to cover it all, but today, what we're going to be going into eventually, if I ever do get around to the point, sorry about that, is we're going to be talking about money as a concept. I'm not going to be going into the history of money or our modern ideas of currency, but I will be talking more so about how we view money and how people view money and where our belief systems around money come from. And specifically, I'm going to be talking about our money blueprint. So I'm very excited for this episode. I wrote this all out. I tried a new cafe today. I've been trying a new cafe this week and as well as a new medication. The new medication, great. Makes me feel hungover every time I wake up though, which is not great. Like I feel like so exhausted when I wake up and then it goes away and stuff. It's like fine or whatever. So that's fun. But I've also been trying a new cafe and I kind of feel a little guilty about that a little bit because I've been going to the same cafe and I love them there. Me and the baristas, we're like best friends. I know so much about their lives. Do I remember their names all the time? No, but I love each and every one of them. Actually, this new year, my New Year's resolution, I'm going to learn their names. Anyways, that's beside the point. Water. That's another thing I'm doing. Some drinking water actually, but I wrote all this out at this new cafe and I kind of feel like I'm cheating on my old cafe, but this new cafe is actually quite nice. It's like very aesthetic. It's kind of how like I want to decorate my new apartment. Like I don't know how to describe the aesthetic more than like, Spaghetti Factory, how amazing their interior decoration is, like whoever is like the brain or the muse or like the interior decorator for Spaghetti Factory, you ate it. You ate that up. Like every time I step into a Spaghetti Factory, no matter where I am, like I just feel like transported to like what my brain looks like. I don't know how to describe it. Like there's like stained glass windows, there's beautiful artwork, the walls are like fun colors and also brick, and there's like a train car in there randomly. And it's just beautiful and it's just full of life. And that's what I love. Like that's like the decorations I love. And that's how I want to decorate my new apartment. And that's kind of how this new cafe looks. It's like very kind of eclectic with like different kind of chairs and tables all mixed together and like rugs. There's like 12 rugs in there. It's very beautiful. I really like it. Anyways, back to what I'm talking about. I wrote this script that we're talking about today in there. I think that was the point. I don't remember if there's an actual point to me talking about all of that, but I wrote this and I'm very excited. And it is such like, there's so much I can talk about when it comes to money. And the reason why I'm talking about money on a podcast about your mindset is because we hold on to a lot of childhood like trauma around money. I don't want to use the word trauma because the way that the adults in our lives interacted with and spoke about money, we actually internalize a little bit. And I think this is also important because like the topics I cover on the Neechie Mindset podcast all have to do with like quality of life and like bettering your quality of life, maybe, like, and mindset and quality of life is tied to money. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't, but because when you can pay your bills on time, when you aren't living in a paycheck to paycheck cycle, when you're not worrying and constantly stressing about finances, you can do so much internal work and actually set out and achieve goals in like your outer world as well, when you don't have like this big stressor, when you're not constantly stressing about bills. And so money as a concept does build into this larger kind of well-being and this wellness that we're talking about on the Neechie Mindset podcast, which is why we're talking about it today. Without further ado, I don't know how long I've been talking. Let's get into it. Why is money scary? It's not, I mean, it doesn't have to actually be scary. It shouldn't actually be scary, but it can be. It could be hard figuring out how and what to do with your money. It could be scary knowing that you don't have enough money to cover your bills. Like money can be scary. So why is that? Especially for like Neechies, especially for like Indigenous people. Money is a relatively new concept to us Indigenous folks. And I'm not saying that as like an excuse or anything. But I am saying it as an excuse, actually. Most, if not all, Indigenous nations on Turtle Island didn't use money the way we use money today. We had organized trade-based economies. You gotta wait for the sirens to stop. You gotta wait for the sirens to... I think they've stopped. Okay. So what does an organized trade-based economy mean? It just means that when we met with others, we traded. It would be like, hey, I like that piece of hide you have. Let me trade you this tool that I made, Or it'd be like, hey, that shell is pretty nice. Maybe you want some grade A pemmican for it. That's kind of like, like things were traded. We didn't have like this resource that we equated value to it, monetary value onto. We just traded, and there's an honor system. And mostly though, we had everything we needed. Like we lived off the land the same way that our animal people relatives do. We hunted, we gathered, we crafted, we innovated everything that our community would need using nature around us. And whatever we did use, we made sure to use all of it. So there wasn't like this need to be constantly in consumption, like if that hide looks nice, then you can go out and you can hunt and you can process your own hide, And a lot of times these trades were mainly just to build relationship and kinship between nations or to establish like trading routes. I live in a Musqueam, which is in Treaty 6 territory. And a Musqueam was actually like a traditional trading route. There's actually shells from the Gulf of Mexico that you could find in the river because it was like this large trading route that spanned like all the way across Turtle Island. And so many nations came here. And this, of course, is a meeting ground for like the Cree, Blackfoot, Dene, Anishinaabe, Nakota Sioux. Like this was like a major like trading port spot, I guess. And yeah, when we traded, it was usually to build relationships and kinship with one another. So these colonial ideas of currency and money and capitalism came with the colonizers. I mean, they've been using money since before Jesus was walking in Palestine. So obviously they have a bit more experience with it. Like they have generations of experience of like interacting and using money. And of course, I'm not saying that people who grew up having that lineage of having generations upon generations of people using money don't come with their own limiting beliefs around money. I'm just saying that Indigenous people we're very new to the concept of money, our modern idea of money and currency. One of the ways we as Indigenous people began partaking in like our modern ideas of currency was through the fur trade. Now, this is where my Métis heritage comes to play. comes to play, because Indigenous people were so darn good at working with the land and our relatives, like the animals, and specifically with trapping. We were the main providers of furs for fur traders. And on top of that, there was also a lot of, now at this time, socio-political tension that made Indigenous lives harder and harder to live. Namely, they began to restrict our movements while disrupting our trade routes and generally upheaving our lives. Anyways, many Indigenous people began trading furs for goods because they needed to now. And here's a quick little history lesson for my Neechies who don't know like much about Métis. Basically, during the fur trade, Indigenous women were incredibly important to the survival of fur trappers, fur traders, because they were like usually French Canadian men who were fur traders. And of course, Indigenous women knew the land, they knew the animals, they knew how to effectively trap animals and provide and process their furs. That made them incredibly valuable to fur traders. And so the men began to marry, I quote unquote marry these women, and they would have children. I say marry in quotations because what would happen a lot of the time is that these fur traders, fur trappers, French Canadian fur trappers would actually have wives already, like in central eastern Canada, and then they would go west for like many months out of the year, maybe even a couple of years, and they would leave their wives behind because the wilderness is no place for a woman. And then they would actually travel west and do all their trapping and their trading and whatever, and they would actually take Indigenous women as second wives, and they would have children, and then they would go back to their other wives, and then they just kept them separate. Like, that's crazy. So anyways, these children being born were the first Métis, and these children were largely raised by the Indigenous women in their nations, and largely it was Cree women who were having these children. And so those babies were the first Métis. And of course, once the mixing began, it was hard to stop, and suddenly an entire nation was born. And as time continued, the Métis eventually became like their own person, and they sought their own personhood. They developed their own language, their own practices, and their ceremonies are kind of closely tied with Cree ceremonies. But yeah, they developed their own stories, and they just became their own people. And Métis were largely trappers, buffalo hunters, and rebels. They caused a lot of political upheaval. Louis Riel, I'm looking at you. Okay, so history lesson done. Money is a relatively new concept to us. And like, I'm not saying this like lightly. I'm literally like, my cookum, she's 100. I love my cookum. My cookum is 100 years old. She grew up in Big Prairie. And what her and her family did to like earn money was they trapped rabbits. And it was actually my cookum's job to like process the furs. And so she tells me stories of waking up early and having to like stretch out and put all the furs like in the sun so they could dry and whatever. And she would do like hundreds of furs within a week. And then they would take them to the Hudson Bay store, and you want to know what they sold them for? Was 8 cents a pelt. However, because of blatant racism in the Indian Act, probably, I don't know, they were never given this actual money. Like, whenever my cookum or any of her family like dropped off these rabbit pelts, they were never given 8 cents. They were given store credit. Then they would use the store credit to buy things like flour and like tea and lard and anything else that they needed that they couldn't like grow or source themselves. And that's my cookum. Like, that's my grandmother. And yeah, like the way that my cookum, my grandmother grew up was whenever they wanted housing, then they built it. You know, whenever they needed food, they grew it. Or, you know, they bought whatever they could at the store because, of course, their movements were quite restricted, unfortunately. Anyways, money can be a bit terrifying and overall confusing for us just genetically, honestly, because again, it's very new for us. And that's like not a new thing for Indigenous people, because like even for myself, like I'm not only like one of the first generations that like truly has to like deal with money the way that we know money right now as it is, but I'm also like the first generation out, like as a woman, that I could, do my own thing, have my own career. I don't have to bear children like by my early 20s, and I'm also the first generation out from residential schools and day schools, because my dad went, my cookum went. So again, the reason why money in life can be a bit terrifying for us is because we're not only overcoming like a bunch of generational trauma, but also this world is just new to us. But yeah, just genetically, generationally, money is a new concept to us. And a lot of us grew up poor. And that's a whole other thing that affects how we view and interact with money. And now, as I've said time and time again, a lot of our mindset was crafted in childhood. And does that mean you're stuck with it? Of course not, because why would I be talking about it right now with you? Why would I be doing this podcast? Okay. So we're going to be talking about what is your money blueprint. Let's try a little exercise. I want you to take a moment and think about your first memory surrounding money. I'll be silent. Okay. Maybe it came up quickly, maybe it took a bit of time, but you probably have, like, even if it wasn't your very first memory, maybe they'll come later, but you have like a very early memory around money. And for a lot of us Neechies, it's probably like parents stressing about bills. Maybe it's getting a bucket of chicken on payday. Maybe it's making $10 when you babysat your cousins. Or maybe it's the adults in your life at the kitchen table talking about how greedy Chief and Council is. And I'm not saying that Chief and Council is greedy. My God, I'm just saying that adults tend to talk like that. Okay. Now, you may not know it, but that memory and a lot of the other memories that are formed in your childhood have a lot to do with your money blueprint. Now, what is a money blueprint? A money blueprint is a set of beliefs and behaviors that guides our actions when dealing with money. Basically, it's beliefs about money formed in childhood that we carry into our adult life and becomes a reason behind why we do what we do concerning money. Now, if it's your first time hearing about this concept of a money blueprint, it might kind of surprise you, and you might kind of think it like wishy-washy to think that like there's anything controlling your behavior surrounding money. But what you're going to learn through this podcast and just through exploring these concepts a bit further is that there's actually reasons behind why we do anything, and they usually stem from our childhood. Here's an example. Say you're a big spender. For some reason, when your paycheck hits your account, it's gone within a week. Pay week, you're living it up, eating out every meal, buying whatever you like, filling up your tank, filling up other people's tanks, being very generous with your money, going out with friends, buying a gaming system. And then next week, you're broke and you have to borrow $20 from your favorite cousin again. And every week before your next paycheck, you're wondering, where did all of my money go? Why does it feel like it's like sand falling through my fingers? Does that sound a little bit familiar? It did to me. Even when I began making like adult money, quote unquote, it seemed like whenever there was money in my account, like I needed to spend it. Like I needed to see zero in my account for some reason. No matter if I had like things I needed to pay for, like bills or something, like a big purchase I needed to make or whatever, like whenever money would hit my account, it'd be gone very quickly. And I was always like, oh my God, like I don't make enough money, or oh my God, like the economy is so bad. And while that is true, generally that is true, a lot of it was just me recklessly spending it. And it wasn't until I looked into my past, into my childhood, that I realized why I was doing that. So as a young Neechie with lice, probably, you had it too. My God, don't lie. I knew every time my mom got paid, and it wasn't because like I kept track of her schedule or anything. It was because she would come home with like 2 big boxes of pizza and a 4-liter and a bunch of groceries like frozen pizza and chicken burgers, the whole 9 yards. And we'd eat so good for that night and then for maybe the week after that. But then the food would be gone, and the next week we'd be struggling putting together meals to feed all the kids. And like I'd go to bed hungry and we couldn't ask for anything more because my mom didn't have any more money to spend, at least until next payday, where then we would have a big bucket of chicken and with all the fries, all the fixings. And again, the cycle would continue. Now, this is for a lot of reasons: the economy, a single income paying for a house full of children and their food, a general lack of planning when it came to grocery shopping. However, a lack of financial literacy also played a big part. Now, do you kind of see how experiences and those money memories that we have in childhood can kind of show back up when we're adults and we're dealing with our own money? The way that adults used and view money in our childhood is how we view money as a concept now. However, there's more than just like the practical use of money. This can also affect our entire belief system around money. And that's important because the way that we think about money affects how we manage money. So beliefs around money. Have you ever heard like money is the root of all evil and you have to sell your soul to be rich and that all rich people are greedy? Are these kind of like, drumming up some memories? Like you've probably heard it and maybe you've even said them yourself. These are like common phrases you hear everywhere, every day, honestly, like in everyday conversation or even in self-help books or in any books. There's like this connotation that we have that rich people are evil, that money is somehow tied to that evilness. And these things might be said just like all willy-nilly. However, they can have a profound effect on how you view and interact with money, especially if you heard them as a kid. And another thing that we're learning throughout this podcast as season 1 unravels is that just because someone else said it doesn't mean it's true. And just because it's what other people, even the closest people in your life, just because it's what they believe doesn't mean that you have to believe it or that you have to internalize that mindset. We have free will. We can create our own thoughts and belief systems around the world and around ourselves. And of course, around money. Now, let me bring out this big book. Honestly, though, I really recommend, like, whenever you're tuning in for an episode, like, carry, like, a notebook around with you or something like that. Like, I have this, like, giant workbook, and you don't need to be this intense. But yeah, I love doing like a lot of this kind of work where like I'll listen to a podcast and they'll be like, oh, like think about something like this. And I'll literally pause it and like I'll think about it, like I'll write it down and everything. So when I asked you earlier, think about your first memory with money, like write that down, keep it, because it's important to reflect on. Anyways, within this book are some of those things I grew up hearing around money. And honestly, I did this last year, like this whole like kind of undoing these indoctrinated beliefs around money. I started like doing the work to unpack them and to reverse them and recalibrate those beliefs. And honestly, it was maybe the best thing I've ever done for my financial life. Because for the first time ever last year, I got out of the paycheck to paycheck cycle. And that was something that I like worked my ass off for like years, like trying to do, but it just always, I never could for some reason. And then I did this kind of work. And then now, like, I don't have to worry if someone's late paying me for something, like a contractor is late for paying me for something, because I have money, and that is maybe one of the biggest reliefs that I've had. I just spit all over this mic. Okay, that was disgusting. Anyways, in this little notebook, let's go over some examples of kind of money blueprints that I had, like kind of these beliefs I had around money, and what I did to kind of undo them. And I'm going to teach you what you can do to undo them. Okay, so I kind of wrote it all here on a page, but these are some fears and the thing is that these are fears around money. Even those things that I mentioned earlier, that money is the root of all evil, that rich people like sell their souls to become rich or whatever, those are made out of fear. And they also have some weird biblical undertones too, which I also go into here because for part of my childhood, I was raised Christian at one point. So yeah. Anyways, so some of the examples I have here is the higher they are, the further they fall. So that's a quote that's used a lot for a lot of different things. But I heard it as people who are successful will fall further or whatever. I don't know. Okay, I'm not gonna keep talking about what was behind it. We'll go into that later, but I'll just shoot off a lot of these like kind of beliefs that I held and that I had to fix in the last year. That rich are the reason for climate change. I mean, billionaires are, but billionaires are an entirely different class. When I'm talking about rich, from here on out, I'm like talking about like highly successful people. I'm not talking about billionaires because billionaires cannot exist ethically. Being rich means that you're greedy, that my family will resent me if I have money, that I'll become a bad person if I'm rich. Again, that's kind of tied to the money is the root of all evil kind of thing. Another big one, sacrificing mental and physical health for money, that it's hard work to be rich, that being rich means that you're godless, that money is your God kind of thing. That to be rich, I need to sacrifice like my family, my health, and my soul and my humanness to be rich. And that paying bills is hard. Like it can be that simple, that paying your bills is hard. That can be a belief that you can unlearn, and that's something that you should unlearn, because the thing is, like, we're taught that struggle is character building, and it can be, and it is. But the thing is, haven't we struggled enough? Haven't we struggled in systemic oppression and racism that we had to face ever since we were born, just because we were born Native? I don't think we need to struggle for our entire life, and I don't think that's even a very traditional belief, honestly. Yeah, some parts of life can be hard and can be difficult, but I don't think that we are meant to struggle, and that being an adult and living life is supposed to be hard. We don't need to make it hard for ourselves. But again, like, a lot of people live very different lives than I do, and that one might trigger you a little bit, honestly, because it used to trigger me because of the way I grew up. Now, these are all just like examples of beliefs that I held and that I worked through in the last year alone. And of course, there's so much more that is like coming up, especially as like I grow in my career and in my work and everything. Of course, like, I wouldn't be talking about this if there wasn't a way to modify your beliefs around money. Okay, so what I'm going to need you to do is that I need you to think of some beliefs that you, or things that you heard, sayings that you say or even hear, and even some of those childhood memories surrounding money. Like, what are some like things when you think about money, what do you believe about it? Do you believe that earning money is hard? Do you believe that being rich means being less Native? Do you believe that people who are rich are bad people? Do you believe that money is evil? Do you believe, like, I want you to go through and really like take stock of like these beliefs that maybe you don't even realize that you are believing. And I want you to, again, if you have a moment, unless you're driving, if you're driving, don't take out a notebook, for the love of God. Please don't. Please just keep your eyes on the road. I want you to take out something to write on, even your phone app, your notes app, and write down these beliefs one by one. Okay, once you've done that, you should have a list of kind of like beliefs that you have, or things that you've internalized around money and finances and having money and like dealing with money and stuff. Because another belief I had was that everything I have, I should give away. And that comes also from just having a very incredibly generous dad. But also like the church as well, like that played a role in it as well. So even these things that can be perceived as good, they might not be super helpful, because maybe you keep giving away money, even though you need money to feed yourself, So what I want you to do is I want you to have, those fears kind of lift. I want you to have like those beliefs listed out, and then leave a little room under each of them. So what you're going to do is that you're going to work through them with me right now. So take one of those beliefs, and that is now a fear, because honestly, most of them do stem from fear. And it might not be your fear, it might be fear that your parents had, or unease, or honestly, jealousy, hatred, or any animosity they hold towards money. Anyway, so that fear, write down what that is. So, for example, here I have fear. Being rich means sacrificing health, mind, body, soul, or becoming rich is hard work to the point of sacrificing self. So I kind of combine those two because they're quite similar. And the overarching idea is that becoming rich requires me to sacrifice myself in some way or the things I love. So you write down that fear. Next, you're going to ask yourself, where did this fear come from? And I want you to get like specific. So for the fear of being rich means sacrificing health, mind, body, soul. I wrote under where did this come from? I wrote watching movies, the hero, the success story is all about hard work, staying up all night, neglecting themselves, their health, family, life. It's sort of portrayed in a greedy way. And I also wrote that it came from what I was told in school, being told that like hard work equals payout, a big payout and success. And I'm not saying that hard work is a bad thing. It isn't. It took hard work for me to get where I am today. But I'm more so talking about like the extreme version of that, where, you know, they're staying up late, they're not eating any food, they're incredibly restrictive, they don't have any social life or anything like that. They're just not taking care of themselves, all in pursuit of money. And that's what's portrayed a lot in like movies and TV shows a little bit, and even in books, is that you have to do that in order to earn a lot of money. Next, what I want you to do is to recalibrate, because that is what we're doing. We're recalibrating the way we think about this concept, about money, about being rich and what that means. So under recalibrate, what you're going to do is that you're going to take that fear, that belief, and you're going to undo it in a way by writing a new mantra, by just unpacking that belief and saying like, hey, money isn't actually evil. Money is just a thing. Like it's plastic or paper if you're in America, or it's just numbers on a screen, or it's energy if you're very into spirituality. And money is just a thing. It's not evil. It really isn't. So for example, for this one, for the fear of being rich means sacrificing health, mind, body, and soul, under recalibrate, I wrote success, money, financial freedom come from bettering yourself and your mind. So it's undoing that belief that in order to become rich or wealthy or whatever, that I needed to sacrifice my health. I said, no, actually, to become rich, you need to become a better version of yourself, which is true, because there's like this big study about like people who study CEOs or whatever are like high earners, and they all work out, they all eat well, they all don't bed rot, you know, and stuff. There's like certain behaviors that all of them exude that help them earn money, that help them attract more money into their lives. And so I'm recalibrating this fear that by pursuing monetary wealth, like I have to sacrifice my health. Instead, I'm saying, no, I need to actually become healthier in order to become wealthier. And I also wrote, I'm not sacrificing anything to become rich. I am just becoming better. And that abundance attracts abundance, and that I am better, so I attract better. And these are all kind of like mantras. These are all things that you can believe instead of that fear. And when I say better, I'm not equating people and saying that this person is better than this person. I'm just saying that there are better, healthier habits that you can do to take care of yourself. All right. Sorry about that. I had a little technical difficulty. My camera overheated. And if that's not telling you that I am talking heat, I don't know what will. Anyways, where were we? So basically what we're doing is that we're just unpacking that belief that you had surrounding money, that fear that you had. And instead of having that fear, we're just putting new mantras and new beliefs that you can hold on to instead. So the core of the fear of being rich means sacrificing health, mind, body, and soul is that being rich requires like sacrifice of my health. That's like the fear, right? And so I explored where it came from so that I could see that that belief stems from somebody else or somewhere else, and that I don't actually need to believe that. I don't need to incorporate that into my beliefs. And now I'm going to recalibrate that. And instead of having that fear, I'm going to put new beliefs there. So those are beliefs that, like, no, actually becoming healthier and taking care of my health is going to attract more money into my life. And that by becoming better, quote unquote, better, that I will make better money, you know? And so that means that I don't have to sacrifice my health to become rich. You know, I don't have to sacrifice my body, my mind, my health, my soul, or any of that stuff that we're kind of like told or shown in movies and TV shows, you know? So you're just recalibrating that belief. And now this can be like your new mantra. So my new mantra for that would be, I am better, so I attract better. And that's what you do. You just go through each of your fears, and you state the fear or the belief or the limiting belief, and then you ask yourself, where does it come from? Like, where in your childhood does this stem from? And then you recalibrate it. And if you're having trouble with the recalibration part, because maybe you don't read as many self-help books as I do, but you could also just look online to say, like, better beliefs about money. You can take ones that are similar to that fear and put those instead, you know? Some common examples, like one I've stated again and again in this episode, is that money is the root of all evil, and that, like, rich people are bad. That's not true. That is not true. That's just something that we've been taught to believe. And so a way you can unpack that is you could say, like, where does that come from? Oh, it's something that you hear in TV shows and movies. It's something you heard around the dinner table growing up. How do you recalibrate that belief? Well, you can recognize that being rich does not equal greediness. There's a lot of people who are rich who are incredibly generous with their wealth. And one of the biggest, like, aha moments I actually have had in my life is that the bad rich people are just bad people. And that money is not evil in and of itself. Money is just money. Like, think about it. It's just a thing, you know? It doesn't dictate your worth. It doesn't dictate who you are as a person. But what I've come to kind of understand is that it just makes you more of who you are. So the bad rich people are just bad people who happen to be rich. You know, being rich doesn't make them bad. They were already someone who wasn't super great to begin with, you know? Like, a poor person can also be greedy and selfish, and a poor person can also be incredibly generous with what they have. And a rich person can be greedy and selfish, and a rich person can be incredibly generous. It doesn't have anything to do with money. It has everything to do with the person's heart. The way that I like to look at money now is kind of like a hammer. Just wait. A hammer. You know, a hammer can, by one person, be used as a tool, and by another be used as a weapon. The hammer in and of itself is not bad or evil. It all depends on the person and how they choose to wield it, you know? So a person can use to build something, a person can use to hurt someone, you know, and money is the same way. It can be used to do a lot of good, but it can also be used to do a lot of bad. That's a way that you can undo and recalibrate a lot of these beliefs that we grew up with. Like, just because it's something that you've believed most of your life, it doesn't mean that it's true. And it doesn't mean it's something that you have to continue to believe. So what I want you to do, I'm going to close this book now. What I want you to do is I want you to, like, go home, or if you're doing it right now, just go through each belief that you have and figure out where it came from. And then I want you to recalibrate it. I want you to put, instead of that fear, I want you to put a new belief, one that will help you in the long run, and one that will frame money in a healthier way. Because that is the first step, honestly, to becoming better with your money. Because the thing is, it wasn't until I started doing a lot of that work that I actually began to, like, be better with my money. Like, ever since I started earning money when I was 13, I always wanted to be better with my money because I just kept spending it frivolously. And yes, a lot of that had to do with the childhood I grew up in. Like, I grew up not very well off at all. And so when I started making adult money, I started spending it on all these things that I never had access to, or that I couldn't ever spend money on when I was a kid. And you know what? That's fine. Like, give yourself grace. I think the number one thing too with money, you just have to give yourself grace because you're learning. And so I give myself grace that even though I was making really good money when I worked at a bank when I was like 19, I had like 3 jobs at that time and I was making pretty good money. And I was able to save some of it to actually go traveling eventually, but I didn't save all of it. And I could have saved a lot more and traveled a lot longer. Yeah. So having grace for yourself is incredibly important, but so is doing this work of like looking at these things that we are taught to believe about money and undoing them if they don't serve you, because that's going to be the thing that drives you to follow your budget. That's going to be the thing that drives you to maybe advocate for yourself to get a better paying job or to go for that promotion. So yeah, I guess that's everything I'll talk about today concerning like money as a concept. And next episode, we're going to be talking about the practicalities of money and what a healthy relationship with money looks like, and next steps for you to become more like financially literate, to become more financially secure. And so we're going to be talking about budgeting, saving, investing. We're going to be talking about it all next episode. But this is kind of where I wanted to start everyone off on, because again, it's like so important that before I even start talking about budgeting and investing and saving, that you have a renewed view of money, because starting with your mindset and is so incredibly important. Because the thing is, no matter how much you budget, no matter how much you save, no matter how much you make, honestly, it's not ever going to feel enough, and you're never going to feel stable if you think, like, if you believe that you're bad with money or that money is evil. Yeah, go do that. I keep saying the same thing over and over again. Just go do it, okay? Go recalibrate those beliefs. And if you're having any trouble, literally just like comment down below, and I'll make sure to check all the comments of like wherever this episode airs. And I mean, also on the Patreon, because I am going to be starting a Patreon for the Neechie Mindset podcast and stuff like that. Like, we'll talk about it and I'll help walk you through like how to kind of undo some of those limiting beliefs. Yeah. Anyways, go do that. I love you. I'll see you next episode. Thank you for tuning in. I think that's everything for now, at least. Like, this is, again, a concept that I will probably talk about many times on this podcast. But for now, let's start there. Okay, I'll see you next time. Ciao.